All right, everybody, it's 4 o'clock, so I'll declare the meeting open. Just check the IT, that is working. So I just want to advise all present that an audio recording is being made of this meeting. All persons attending the meeting are to be respectful of and considerate towards other persons also attending the meeting. Language and conduct at this meeting that could be perceived as offensive, defamatory or threatening to a person attending the meeting or listening to the recording is not acceptable. For the purposes of the recording, elected members should wait for the chair to announce them before speaking, and I'd just like to request all mobile phones are turned off or down at this stage. All right, so present we have Councillor Posselt, Councillor Dr Sherlock, Councillor Harvey, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Dutta, the Lord Mayor, Councillor Reynolds, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Kelly and Alderman Zuko, plus myself, Councillor Lohberger. Apologies, do we have any apologies, CEO?
Yeah, from Councillor Kitsos, Chair.
Thank you. So Councillor Kitsos is an apology today. Are there any leave of absences? I believe there are none, no leaves of absence. Okay, so I just, in recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the City of Hobart was built. I acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and rights. I recognise the value of continuing Aboriginal knowledge and cultural practice and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. Okay, now can we have a elected member move the motion to confirm the minutes from last time? Councillor Sherlock, is there any debate about the minutes at all? I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
All right.
Aye, that is unanimous.
Just a query in there. Sorry, my apologies, Chair.
Certainly.
From memory and my understanding is that Councillor Sherlock wasn't at the meeting for the whole time, and therefore she is not in a position to accept the minutes to confirm.
I'm not sure that that's a problem in the Act, but if you would like to move the minutes, you weren't either.
No, I wasn't there. I just, it's standard practice anyway. It's a norm that when you're at the meeting.
Certainly. I don't think it's an issue, but Alderman Bloomfield has also confirmed the minutes. She was here. Right, consideration of supplementary items. Do we have any supplementary items, CEO?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Just moving on. Any indications of conflict of interest in any items appearing on the open agenda this afternoon? Okay, no, we have none. Moving along to transfer of agenda items. Are there any items proposed for transfer by any member, either on the open or closed agenda this evening? No, that is fine. So that gets us to item 6, items for workshopping. So we now move into the workshop portion. Elected members are reminded no decisions can be made in the workshop setting. And our first item is LGAT motion, LGBTIQA+ inclusion. I'll invite the Manager of Community Programs and the Director of Community and Economic Development to give us a presentation on this item.
Thank you, Chair. This item is coming from the City's LGBTIQA+ reference group, which has been operating now for just over 12 months. The first meeting was in May last year, and this particular item was one of the very first actions that came from that group. So if I can, I'd like to invite the Chair of the LGBTIQ+ reference group, Trenton Hall, who will speak to this motion.
Welcome, Trenton. If you could just speak into the microphone for the recording purposes of the recording. Thank you.
Thank you. Feeling fancy, didn't realise I'd be in the chair. Good afternoon, Lord Mayor, Deputy Lord Mayor, the Chair, CEO, councillors and all other staff. My name is Trenton Hall. I use they, them pronouns and I'm the Chair of the City of Hobart LGBTIQA+ reference group. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and present the motion that we encourage you to bring to the GAT General Meeting on the 20th of November 2025. Our membership of the reference group includes individuals of all ages, walks of life, and expresses the diverse range of people who live within the City of Hobart. The proposed motion has directly come from community and is supported with evidence that demonstrates the lived experiences of LGBTIQA+ Tasmanians, whether it be positive or negative. For example, both LGBTIQA+ adults and young people in Tasmania face significant mental health challenges. For instance, nearly 80% of LGBTIQA+ adults and almost 89% of young people have experienced suicidal thoughts at some point in their lives. This is starkly higher compared to just 3.3% in the general Australian community. Almost half of LGBTIQA+ adults, which is 48.1%, and over 63% of young people have had recent suicidal ideation. Additionally, 36.7% of adults and 32.7% of young people have attempted suicide at least once in their lifetime. Verbal abuse is alarmingly common, with 38.1% of LGBTIQA+ adults reporting such incidents in the past year. While fewer reported recent sexual assault, 14.5%, and physical violence, 7.2%, these figures are likely underreported due to stigma. These statistics are because of prejudice, discrimination, and stigma. The Tasmanian State Government has a clear understanding of this because it has taken proactive steps to understand and consult with our community. LGBTIQA+ Tasmanians Telling Us the Story is a report that was commissioned by the State Government, and with its findings, it's found that, and I quote, violence, discrimination, harassment, and stigma motivated by LGBTIQA+ identity was a core concern for our participants in the quality of responses. Many different types of verbal, physical, emotional, and psychological, sexual, and economic violence were noted in this respect, in addition to specific forms of violence perpetrated against particular groups, such as biphobia. These forms of violence were mentioned repeatedly, and participants were explicit about the need to recognise that hate violence is still being perpetrated against LGBTIQA+ Tasmanians, end quote. As you can see in items 3.4.1, 3.4.2 and 3.4.3 of your agenda, the City of Hobart's leadership and advocacy within this space has positive effects upon our community, and our motion provides an opportunity for Council to extend this beyond its municipal border. These types of actions, such as flag raisings, formal community consultation mechanisms, and the development of LGBTIQA+ action plans, counteract the horrific statistics I stated earlier. With our motion, the City of Hobart can replicate the State Government's proactive approach by ensuring our local government association and other Tasmanian councils are fully supported in fostering LGBTIQA+ inclusion. Our reference group recognises that a number of councils within Tasmania have taken such actions towards fostering LGBTIQA+ inclusion, such as Brighton, Burnie City, Clarence City, Derwent Valley, Glenorchy City, Huon Valley, Kingborough, City of Launceston, and the Meander Valley. Tasmania, unlike other states such as Victoria, does not have guides or support materials to assist municipalities which need the confidence to reach out to their local LGBTIQA+ communities. In other states, these have been developed by local government associations. Legat has already shown its support by partnering with Equality Tasmania on an LGBTIQA+ local government forum in Launceston earlier this year. We want to build on that primary beginning. The motion we propose for you to bring forward to the Legat General Meeting on the 20th of November allows for such to occur. Please refer to points 3 and 4 of our motion. And I would like to bring my own personal story to bear on this issue. In my high school years on the northwest coast, I was part of a choir and we had a performance down here in Hobart. As we were on the bus leaving the city to head back home, we drove past Townhall and I saw the pride flag raised outside the building. I burst into tears because I had never seen visible signs of respect and inclusion for my community and for me in my hometown before. For those 10 seconds we drove past Townhall, I knew I was safe and welcomed in Hobart. I have now called Hobart home for nearly 5 years and I continue to feel safe and welcome. Visibility is powerful and it shouldn't be restricted by local government area borders. We strongly urge you to continue your leadership and advocacy for our community by bringing forward our motion to Legat. The reference group would like to thank Renato, Kimbra, Mark and other staff members whose dedication and hard work behind the scenes allowed our voices to be heard within council. We ask that if you seek to amend parts of the motion today or in future, that you consult with the LGBTIQA+ reference group, so it is truly a community-led motion that is brought to Legat. I'm happy to answer any questions or provide the research that I've used within my contribution today. And once again, thank you for allowing the time and space for me to represent the reference group today.
Thank you, Trenton. Just before we open up for questions, I might just ask if Kimbra wants to add anything as well.
No, that's fine. I think Trenton's covered all that. Thank you for that.
Fantastic. Okay, so we'll open it up for questions and for discussion. Who would like to speak first? Councillor Dutta.
Just a question, maybe clarification. The statistics you have stated, like 80%, etc. What's the source of that? Where is that source from?
That source is from, off the top of my head, Councillor Dutta, it is from, I can't remember the report, but it was a submission for the for a state government action plan provided by Working It Out, but I can provide that to you if you wish, so I can give you the full report and submission.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll take that one on notice.
Yes.
Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks, Trenton. I'm just wondering, the list of councils you read out that have got a reference group, have they? That it seemed a pretty extensive number of councils. How many councils are you sort of feeling are slipping behind the kind of standard that you think is that Hobart's sitting at in terms of having a working group?
This is, thanks for the question. This is probably why I emphasise that having materials from Legat to provide to councils that are struggling, because it's great to see what's happening across, and some do have reference groups. I know Burnie does, Kingborough, Glenorchy started one. And
you read out a list of...
Yes.
What was that? That wasn't a working group? That was something else, was it? Oh, okay.
It was it was more broadly who councils that have
Action plans.
similar action plans.
Yeah, excuse me, through Chair,
Yeah,
that is,
sorry.
yeah, they've done action plans, not necessarily reference groups, but they have indicated support
Yeah.
for the community through development, either an action plan or a strategy or document to indicate support.
And that's why you're having Legat to provide those, because it's a bit ad hoc around the state. So there's sort of, like a one-stop shop for, this is not the expectation, but here's what you can do, and consult with community to have, those reference groups and those important ceremonies.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the number 3, the LGAT, develop resources and provide workshops. Yeah, okay. Thank you. I think that's, and in terms of if there were amendments, you're suggesting that will the reference group meet again before the 20th of November?
Through you, Lord Mayor, we could arrange that if there was amendments made, we'd put that through to the group for their comment.
Fantastic. Any other questions or discussion from other members? Councillor Elliott.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Trenton, for acknowledging the issues around mental health and mental illness in the community. I agree that's definitely an issue that needs attention. Can you tell me more about the violence that's being perpetrated on the community? Because violence is completely unacceptable. Are those reports going to police and people when things happen? And are there any, obviously de-identifying it, but can you tell me more about the violence that's occurring?
Off the top of my head, Councillor, I know there's reports to Anti-Discrimination Commission as well as to the liaison officer through Tas Police. Don't have stats on me now, but I can provide you some if you wish. And from the violence that was described in the report that I was reading this morning when I was writing this speech, it's from that verbal harassment as well as sometimes physical in some circumstances. There were quotes in that state government report about people not feeling safe at night due to, and the violence was coming from cis white heterosexual men. But I can definitely find some more stats for you.
Yeah, it's really, I just wanted to understand and make sure that people are feeling comfortable to report that to police. You know, that
Yeah.
there's no fear about going to the police
Yes.
with occurrences like that,
Yeah, and-
because that should absolutely exist.
Yeah, and there was within the reports, and that what I was reading, there was mentions about how, because of stigma and not being understood, that was a reason why some people didn't approach to reporting.
Yeah, so hopefully the state government's
Yeah.
looking at that part. You also mentioned, well, the report, the intended motion refers to all Tasmanian councils consider establishing the reference group. And like the Lord Mayor mentioned, I think you said there's about 10 or so that already have them in place. My thinking is, do we need the 29 reference groups, or does it make sense to have 29? Because there's 29 councils. And you also said how a local government area borders shouldn't be a barrier to things. And I can understand there would be differences in experience between perhaps city councils versus regional. I guess maybe the committee might, or your group might just give the thought to the practical benefit of having 29 of the same small organisations. And we're the biggest, but other councils are much smaller. And whilst under here it says there's no financial impact, there is an indirect financial impact on all councils with coordination time, things like that. So maybe just food for thought to think, is 29 really what's required to achieve the outcome? There might be better.
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor. What we could do is put into there, consider opportunities to work more regionally with other councils in the development.
Yeah, consolidate different groups.
Yeah,
you know,
yes.
like Midlands and
Yeah,
Because
so
I'm just thinking in terms
individually.
of duplication times 29.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly we could add that in to the
Yeah.
motion without it changing the intent.
Okay, thank you. And just in terms of the membership of not only your group but the intended reference groups, do you foresee lesbian and gay people who are same-sex attracted being welcome to these reference groups? For example, lesbians who are attracted to other biological women rather than men with a gender identity, are they welcome?
Absolutely.
Yeah, everyone's welcome to the
Yeah,
group,
certainly.
even despite, preconceived notions, but again, that's a group for everyone to be heard,
Yeah.
so there's no reason why they should not be accepted.
Excellent.
But
Thank
again,
you.
like most meetings, you want to have an inclusive, collaborative
Yeah.
approach.
I just was to make sure that there was no intention that there had to be a certain political belief to be eligible to join the group. No, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. I think we move on to Councillor Dutta.
Thank you. Just again, I need a clarification. With regards to amendments, that it should come back to the reference group, what if they're just minor amendments? And what if the amendment is on the day in council?
So through you, Lord Mayor, what we'd expect is that, the group have actually put together the wording for this amendment, for this motion. So the amendment that Councillor Elliott has suggested we can add in tonight and then put that through to the group. If there was an amendment made on the day of the council, if the intent was the same, I don't think there would be any issue. But if the intent was to change the motion to have a different meaning, I'd suggest that we would defer it go back to the group before it goes to council again, as it is their wording that is being put forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, was there any further questions or discussion? On my left, Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Franklin. Thanks for coming in. In the interest of getting a successful outcome here, because I think you always have to think politically about the damage that could be done when these things are put up in good faith, but they get voted down, which is potentially a worse outcome than them not coming at all. Recognising that even if it gets through this council, that you would then need majority support of the Legat councils. I'm a little bit worried about point 1 and point 2 of the motion, which reads as one jurisdiction somewhat forcing another jurisdiction to do something in the way that they're worded. I think that in terms of a successful passageway through Legat, you would probably have a lot more luck if it was just the 2 final points. which calls on the GAT to develop the resources and provides workshops to councils that want them, and use existing state resources to the best their best ability. And I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. As I said, recognising that if it doesn't get up, it's probably a worse outcome than not coming at all.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Purcell. I would probably politely disagree. We probably see it in a bit of a different light. But I think this, I remember from initial conversations that we had within the group, spanning back, it was that it would be great to even have, so it wasn't just one jurisdiction such as the City of Hobart putting this forward. It was sort of, you know, a collaborative motion as well with other councils that have done foster such inclusion plans. So then it also, you know, so it's a good percentage of, I guess, of representatives who represent the Tasmanian population being like, there's benefits to having these. We encourage you to adopt and do the same. So that's probably why I would also be reluctant to remove, the group would be reluctant to have those first 2 points removed, because then it's also, so, you know, queer people endorse it, have the opportunity to, you know, have the, speak of their experiences with their own communities, rather than, you know, having their opinions flicked off, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, through you, Chair, do you have any thoughts on the consequences of this not getting up at the GAT?
We haven't thought that far ahead because we're hoping that most councillors across the state will act in good faith for a minority community. But I'm sure there will be alternative routes that can be put forward if it was to be voted down. But we're hoping, like everyone, even if you as a council pass the motion through here and at the next council meeting, that you're also collaborating and discussing with your council colleagues across the state to, you know, support a minority community.
All right, thank you, Councillor Posselt. Next we have Alderman Bloomfield.
It's nice to see you here today. And I do like the motions. I do feel that, including them exactly as they are, with the amendment that you discussed earlier with Councillor, it would be appropriate. Mostly because I think at the end of the day, this establishes what is wanted and needed by those who are actually going to be benefiting from it. But more importantly, if there are those who vote against, that'll actually direct you to where the work needs to be done, which is not actually a negative thing. It actually shows, you know, you have support in these areas, perhaps not in those. Let's learn what we can do better in these areas to bring it forward another time. So it doesn't have to be a one-step process, it could be a two, depending on whether or not there are issues to be dealt with. I love the fact that it's here, and I love the fact that it's going forwards, because from what I have seen and worked with the community to date as elected member, I do see that good things have come off this, and I do hope that we continue to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Bloomfield. We've got Alderman Dutta, sorry, Councillor Dutta next, and then the Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'm just picking up the point made by Councillor Posselt. And I was wondering, if you look at point number 1, that all Tasmanian Council commit to, would you consider the word consider instead of commit? That takes away, you know, that obligation, as it were, that's all. And thank you so much for your work that you do. Really appreciate it. I just say it'll soften it, that's all.
We can put that to the group.
Fabulous. Thank you, Councillor Dutta. Go to the Lord Mayor.
Yeah, just a question, probably either to Kimber or the CEO, just around what the rules, the LGAT rules are around motions and how many movers you can have for or endorsers of a motion in the early stages, because I appreciate Trenton's suggestion that we get other, because it looks as though there's quite a number of other councils that are pretty advanced in this space, and some of them may be better messengers to the other councils than Hobart in some ways, having done motions at Legat. I'm pretty conscious of the way the meetings operate. I'm just wondering, can you have 6 movers of a motion, or is it literally got to have a mover and a seconder?
CEO.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Look, we'd need to double check, but I've only ever seen a mover and a seconder, so I think you'd be better off drawing reference to the councils that have actually engaged, and have the policies in place, and actually reference them in the report, I think, as opposed to. But obviously, you still need to sort someone out to be able to do the seconding. So, but I think drawing it out in the report would be the appropriate way.
All right. Now, were there any further comments or questions on this issue? No, I think I have one more. I have one, and then we'll be done. Look, I just wanted to thank Trenton and Renato and Kimbra for all this work, and the members of the reference group. I'm on one of those reference groups myself. I know there's a lot of work involved in the background, and I think you're working with some pretty good staff there, so you're in good hands. But thank you so much for all the work, and good luck with the motion. Thank you. All right, so that brings us to the end of that item. When we move on to 6.2, I'll just give Kimbra and Trenton a chance to get away from the table. Oh, you're staying. Okay. So we'll invite the Manager of Community Programs to join us. Thank you. And, it's the Director of Community and Economic Development to join us, because Kimbra is in fact already there. Okay. Kimbra.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this report is in response to a motion that was presented to Council. So this is in regards to the volunteer awards that are given out by the City. So in this report we talk about removing one of the awards that were previously given out, which was the Volunteer of the Year awards for each of the program areas. Through discussion with the volunteers themselves and the volunteer coordinators, there was a sense that the competitive nature of those awards was a bit of a barrier, and it was also more difficult. It worked very well for some programs such as Mather's House, where we had a lot of different volunteers doing different roles and different commitments to volunteering. Whereas in some other areas, which were a lot of our reference groups, most of the volunteers were actually doing the same type of work. So through discussion with volunteers and the coordinators, it was decided that we would put forward to not hold those awards going forward. The suggestion is that we still do hold the same volunteer program reception, which is a thank you for all of our volunteers across the Community and Economic Development Network. So that would be held on the 9th of December following the AGM, as it was last year. We will also look at potentially bringing in the volunteers that are going to be working on the Christmas pageant and bring them into that same award ceremony. The proposal would be that any new volunteer programs that come within our network, which is the vast majority of the programs, would go under this award. This policy. The only award that we're saying not to include is the Golden Secateurs Award, which is a Pacific award given out through the bushland area and has been done for about 20 odd years. So this would be any other award, which is through our network, would come through this policy. So we're talking about still doing the milestone awards. So they are the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 year awards, which are, specifically 4 years of service. That would be the only awards that we would be given, but we will still do the program the reception as in previous years. So thank you.
Thank you. Did you have anything further to add, Ben? All right, we'll open that one up for discussion or questions. Does anybody wish to start us off? Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Chair. Through you, Chair. Yeah, I think this is quite reasonable. It takes away a lot of effort to try and decide who's the volunteer of the year sort of thing. And excluding the Golden Secateurs,
yes,
that's kind of like a recognition of an individual who's been doing things over time rather than just for that year. And it's a longevity thing, plus it's a commitment thing, plus it's an age potentially thing as well, like getting early,
Yep.
So it's a really special award that's deeply embedded within the bush care community.
Absolutely.
So, and it's a fun thing as well. It's a sign of respect for individuals who've been outstanding over a long time, which is why I like to go to that event.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other ones, I'm happy to have a recognition which recognises longevity, 5-year, 10-year. I think that's really good. And then there's no distinction of trying to pick out an individual who has shone throughout that particular year. So I think it's more equitable to have a period of service award. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Any other questions or feedback? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you. Just one observation. Thank you. I think it's a good move, and I would support this. In the policy, it mentions from 5 years to 25 years, and I was wondering, if we have a separation, say up to 5 to 15, and then 2025, we say it's a long service award or legacy award, because it's quite significant for someone to contribute 20 years. Instead of just giving that one award, we make the distinction. Just an observation, that's all.
Thanks, Councillor Dutta. And on the night, we actually do distinguish between them. So the people who are getting the 20 and 25 years get a framed award, and then we usually arrange media to celebrate that contribution as well. So on the night, we do kind of treat it a little bit more special, but certainly take your point. It could be
If it's in the policy, clarifies it.
a legacy award. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dutta. Any other questions or feedback around the table? Councillor Posselt.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick clarifier, and you might have said it already, Kimber, but I'm just a tiny bit concerned about one award being left and there not being any other awards. How is the Golden Secateurs, what's the criteria? How is it awarded? How do you differentiate Thelma from Margaret getting the award?
Through you, Chair. So we do have a little bit of information in the report on the Golden Secateurs Award, but as that award is not through our network,
right,
it's actually issued by the Open Space Bushland team. I would need to get some further information from them on how they actually, their recognition program that they do, how they actually, award that one. I don't have that detailed information.
And that would be the only one that would be left other than years of service.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. I guess putting the critical thinking brain on for a sec, it's a bit of it could potentially be an issue where we get a new council, 5 years down the track or next year for that matter, and someone goes, oh, hang on a minute, so they're getting a volunteer award for bush care, why isn't the people over there that are doing those things getting an award as well, which is exactly what we've just abolished. And I think it's potentially dangerous to leave one and abolish all of the others, even though that award has been long-standing. There might be unexpected consequences in the future. And again, it probably elevates, for some reason, other than history, elevates bush care and the Golden Secateur volunteers over volunteers that are volunteering in other capacities around the council, around council business. So I guess on face value and with that rationale, I would probably prefer to see us just no more volunteer awards, only have awards that are in recognition of service, because what people who go out for bush care also love what they do, and people who volunteer in their particular roles around council love each aspect in the same way. I'm just concerned that segregating them is potentially problematic.
Mm. Through you, Chair. So the volunteer awards, year of the awards that we have, they were only 1 year, so we did them as a trial last year.
Right.
So they don't have any longevity or expectation for them, not like the Golden Secateur Awards that have been for over 20 years. So if we were to remove the Golden Secateur Awards, I'd be asking to defer the report, because I would need to consult with the open space team, as it's not my volunteer program, and they would need to have consideration of that being removed. My understanding is that they're very, the longevity is something that they would want to continue, which is why in the policy we've noted that it is separate from the remainder of the award. So I would need to go back to that team if there was that intent to remove that award from the policy as well.
Can I ask, Chair, through you, how the volunteer awards trial came to be for the other aspects? What was the
Yeah,
rationale
certainly. So,
thinking behind
so
it?
through your chair, previous to that, we had the awards that were through the Australia Day program. So that was the Citizen of the Year award, the Community Event of the Award, and Young Citizen. A report was put up to council. It would have been probably about 18 months ago. Speaking of those awards and the lack of nominations that we were getting for the awards, we really were kind of having to kind of beg people to put in for them. They really had lost their relevance, and there was also the consideration of the connection to the Australia Day, where the city had made the decision to not have the citizenship ceremony on Australia Day. So there was that challenge with those awards. So a report was put to council, and the decision was made to go down a different path, which was to continue having the ceremony and look at other award options. So one of the options that we considered and we trialled was the Volunteer of the Year award and the Milestones award. And the Milestone awards have worked very well.
Yeah.
But there, as I've mentioned, there were those concerns with the Volunteer of the Year award, particularly with our networks where everybody felt that their contribution was equal, and we were having to pick somebody from that. So that was very, I brought all our volunteer coordinators together, and there was a consistent agreement that award was not beneficial.
Thank you, Kimber. I think just the final point to make, Chair, is that I think it would be helpful to understand how the Golden Secretary Awards are awarded, because the same conflict must surely happen with that award as well, that there's multiple candidates that would be suitable and have dedicated the same amount of time. And so how do they actually determine who the winner is?
Through your chair, we could
it'd be good to have
provide that information before council
That'd be good.
meeting, but I think also the difference is there's about 200-300 bush care volunteers, so I think the kind of level of service is quite different from some of our advisory committees.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Posselt. Were there any other comments? Okay, I might just end with you, if that's okay, Alderman Bluefield.
I was just interested to read through what you'd done, and the fact was that this policy was basically being put together as a result of the feedback where they said that it was inappropriate to have this Volunteer of the Year award. That wasn't the feedback that came from the Golden Secretaries at all, and the fact that had been socialised and was common for 20 years, associate basically gives us the ability to say that that's actually earned its right and place, whereas this other one isn't socialising correctly, and therefore we just move along and get on with it. So I'm not really entirely convinced that we need to do much more than what you've already suggested. I think what you've done is perfectly fair.
Fabulous, thank you. I think that brings us to the end of that item. So thank you to you guys. Thank you, Kimbra. That's 6.2. So 6.3, next item for workshopping is the Mac Point Stadium Project of State Significance Integrated Assessment Report Outcomes Discussion. So I'll invite the Manager of Strategic Land Use Planning and the Director of Strategic and Regulatory Services to come to the table and introduce the item. Thank you.
Can I just introduce the item? So Jen's going to give an overview of what we've learnt from the report from the TPC. It is very detailed. It might be good if Jen can power through to a certain extent and try and get through the slide deck, and we've got some time at the end for questions.
I do support that. So yes, if we could just wait till the end for questions so that Jen can get through this, because it's going to be quite complicated.
Okay, so the point of today's workshop is to really drill down to the key arguments that the panel put together, and also point out some of those key contentions between the proponent and the panel, and our role and how we sort of fared through this process. I'm going to take it on assumption that some of you may have read the report, some of you may have skimmed it. It really helps to break it down into the topic areas, I find. But I'll just crack on and see how we go. I just wanted to make sure it was clear, because this was a point of contention right through the hearings process as to the scope of the assessment. And I think it's worth reminding everyone that the panel, it was an integrated assessment that was to address the environmental, social, economic and community impacts of the project. It had to the project, they were assessing to see whether the project was consistent and supported the urban renewal of Macquarie Point, what its impacts on the surrounding areas would be, and if it could generate social, economic and cultural benefits to the region and the state. So these points were contested to some extent by the proponent, but this was the scope of the panel. To that point, they did include diagrams in the report because of this issue of scope, and this became a recurring theme throughout the hearings, what was included in the project and what isn't. And this can often be a result of when you are dealing with a project of this significance and its impacts to the wider areas. The report, as I mentioned, is in sections. The largest by far was the economics and social benefits section. They did have an economist on the panel. I'm not going to go into the weeds of how they arrived at their final conclusions. However, I think it's important to note that where they've landed doesn't include the unit cost escalation. However, the price increases that you're seeing there is for things that the panel deemed should be included in the cost of the project. The proponent didn't necessarily agree with this, but this number that you're seeing, the 945 million, that doesn't include for unit cost escalation and is still at 2024 pricing. The earlier 775 million estimate was a concept stage estimate and did not include these other items. There is a lot more to the economic section, and you can take it page by page if you wish to understand it in more detail. During the hearings processes, we heard from all different agencies, government agencies, and there was a significant increase in the amount of events and types of events that they were hoping to host. The breakdown included that we'd still have those main key 34 live sport and entertainment events across those 37 event days, 40 major conferences and the minor non-event bookings. So the point that was made, and I'm aware that you had a briefing as well from the businesses, Tasmanian businesses, is it?
Business events.
Yeah, business events, thank you. Where they covered off some of the types of events that they're hoping to be able to book at the stadium. It's important to note that all of these additional events and all these different types of things that they're hoping to have at the stadium was factored in to the assessment. Just the final point on cost was that the proponent agreed that the works for the Northern Access Road and the commercial fit-outs and other things agreed that the works were necessary but shouldn't be included in the cost. However, the panel disagreed and found that they were essential to the project and therefore they should be included. This covered many days of debate at the hearings, but this is really to summarise it. This is to summarise it. In terms of the next section of the report, it talks about the strategic planning and site plans, and this is sort of strategic land use planning at its most. This is how we strategically plan precincts, and Macquarie Point has had quite a lot of different types of site development plans and master plans, and the point that the panel were trying to make here is that the 2016 scheme, then the reset scheme that's in the planning scheme at present, delivered a lot more floor area, a lot more activation, a lot more types of different uses. And so I thought this table was a really good one to just bring the point home that the Map Point precinct plan and its current design with the stadium will only deliver a smaller component. It's still substantial when you compare it to what's there at the moment, but when you compare it to the other schemes that have been endorsed previously, it's very different. The other point that the Commission made, and I was looking for good examples of this last night to show you, but I wasn't able to settle on one that I thought was a good one to show you, but there's what they've written in their report is that many examples exist where there has been stadiums that have been designed much more into an integrated development, and certainly earlier concept designs that we saw from Cox Architecture had the stadium much more integrated, and it had a whole activated street frontage along Evans Street. And that was sort of where we thought we'd get to. It's sort of the only project that I could think of was in London, the Tottenham Stadium, which has just come online recently. And that, unfortunately, due to the programming and the sheer size of the stadium, and I think budgets, all of that integrated design fell away. So that was something that was a departure from their original aspirations of the project, and the panel really picked that up.
So, oh no, I'll say.
The other big point of contention and the push and pull between the proponent and the panel continued all throughout the hearings was around the relevance of the Sullivan's Cove planning schemes and the principles, and their right of reply was really set out in this report that they see the Sullivan's Cove planning review as the barometer for the assessment, and I thought it was a win for the city, in fact, that they emphasised the importance of the layered landform and townscape interpretation promoted by Lee Woolley over 4 decades. So the work that we've been doing over 4 decades around the city and setting up all the strategic land use planning for Sullivan's Cove and through the centre of the city was recognised, and I think that was just a nice point to bring home today. They concluded that the stadium will dominate and break the rising stepped reading of the landform and unduly compete with the Cenotaph, Queen's Domain and Battery Point, which is what Lee Woolley was doing his best to communicate during the hearings process under cross-examination, which wasn't an easy process, I must say, sitting in the room. So the next few slides just cover off all of the key urban form and public realm issues that they had with the project. This was really brought home. It's almost of the same size as the economic section of the report, but the monolithic architecture, large in scale and bulk, it was the sheer scale of it, and the fact that you won't achieve that activation of Evans Street, nor did they believe that you would have any activation around the stadium. They were not convinced of it being a lively urban outcome for the city. All the other uses proposed in the adjacent areas will have minimal footprints, poor aspect, and are subservient to the hard stand and circulation needs of the stadium. They are not seen as contributing meaningfully to the activation and vibrancy of Macquarie Point outside of event mode. The proponent really failed to convince the panel that this is a precinct rather than a stadium. The other issue, of course, was the comparisons to the Opera House. It made my eyes twitch a little bit every time they mentioned it, but the panel, they concluded that they do not see it as an iconic design, and they did not form the opinion that it does not mitigate the visual and landscape impact on Sullivan's Cove, which they identified as vital to the city's image and tourism industry. And they see it as a dominant, isolated structure disconnected from the city's taller buildings. And it does not reference the existing colonial or industrial port architecture, and it lacked innovation. So I think innovation was something that the proponent has really clung to, but the panel questioned that. Aside from the sheer functionality of trying to get this roof and the span to work, but they felt the overall design wasn't innovative. Further to that point, the materials proposed for the stadium are considered standard for this type of construction and neither reference the existing built environment, both colonial and industrial port design expression, nor a new or novel way of interpreting stadium design. The roof. So this did form a large part of the hearings process because not everyone was convinced of the final transparency level of the ETFE pillows. Because of the shadow issues, we're not quite sure of the level of transparency that's going to be achieved. If they become fairly opaque, then that will change the reading of the stadium yet again. And the panel has concerns around that. Will it be just a big white pillow? And so the panel expressed considerable doubts about the claims from the proponent that the visual impacts of the roof will be minimal. They indicated that the pillows have not been used for such large expanses, that they will need to minimise shadows to facilitate the use of the grounds for cricket, and other potential future changes are likely to alter the level of transparency and consequently its visual impact. And they also had concerns around the signage as well, that the visual impact of signage, especially when approaching from the Booker Avenue and Davey Street, they weren't convinced. And again, it comes to that point where they did not really provide enough visual renders of and photo montages of how the stadium will read as you come down Booker Avenue. That has been sort of an issue for the project. Still haven't found any good renders of that, and they haven't been generated. So they've tried to focus on the angles that best make the stadium look a certain way. So the conclusion on the urban form, they acknowledge that any stadium would be new and a new form when it's inserted into an existing city. However, they believe that there is inadequate space at Macquarie Point to mitigate the site scale negative effects of the visual bulk that Adelaide Oval or the MCG has managed to mitigate. Okay. Just on the cenotaph, their key point was that they did not accept that because the proponent chose this site for the stadium, that then the stadium's size, shape and functional requirements should be given precedent over the heritage values and cultural significance of the cenotaph. They believe that the further evolution of the site, including significant intensification of development, could be accommodated while still retaining the core values of the cenotaph and its setting. The project, however, will not achieve this outcome, and it cannot achieve this outcome due to the functional requirements, and that was the key point to bring home around that. We heard some excellent presentations during the hearings process around the relevance and importance of the cenotaph and the sight lines. For the goods shed, the panel agreed, and this is where it gets a little bit bizarre, with the proponent's own historic cultural heritage, not professor, but of consultant, that the goods shed would it would be a better outcome if the goods shed was moved further to the east and not swung around and sort of squished between the headland and the stadium. And so that's where the panel left their comments. They agreed with that a better outcome for the goods shed would be located to an alternative position on the site. If the complementary integrated mixed-use zone was not constructed, the goods shed could potentially be relocated east of its current location in the same orientation to Evans Street, therefore increasing the legibility of its heritage values and provide more breathing space to this state-listed structure. They think that it hasn't been integrated in a way that was meaningful enough, that maximised the opportunity for its value to be understood and enjoyed. So they recognise that that's not what the proponents have shown and want to do with the goods shed. However, they acknowledged that it would you would have to then change the Mac Point precinct plan altogether to achieve that. But that was their final advice on that. For Aboriginal heritage, I think we can all agree that it's really just become an afterthought, and that wind and noise and it basically just being a verge out the front of the stadium isn't acceptable. The panel acknowledged the perspective of Professor Gregory Lehman in his submission. In part, Professor Lehman's evidence stated the insistence of MPDC to pursue this diminished version of the park at Macquarie Point, despite their own Aboriginal co-design group's advice that the site no longer has the capacity to include a Truth and Reconciliation art park and cultural centre, severely diminishes the Tasmanian government's public commitment to the Mona vision to the point of irrelevancy. And there was also insufficient engagement with the wider Tasmanian communities, which we had said in our submission, and it was reflected in the Commission's report. They picked up on our submission. So, yeah. Just quickly on land use compatibilities issues, the Northern Access Road. So just today, it's worth mentioning, we had a meeting with some officers at DSG just looking at concept designs for the Northern Access Road and where that's currently at. They're expecting that to go on wider community consultation later this year, and they'll be aiming to have an elected member briefing soon around where they're landing with the designs. So, but the compatibility and the functionality of Evans Street and Northern Access Road, the panel just acknowledged that this requires a lot of moving parts, and Northern Access Road may not accommodate all freight vehicles, and how are they going to make sure that Evans Street still functions if need be during events. You probably are all aware that the TSO came to an agreement with the state government that they would receive 4.45 million for improvements to their building to make sure that they'll be less impacted by the stadium. Upper Queen's Domain, I'll talk a little bit about transport in a second, so I'll come back to that. But there obviously was a lot of submissions at the hearings from other adjacent landowners, federal group and the like, around what sort of impacts they would have. The panel balanced their thoughts on this with the amount of potential economic gains that they might have as well, so I think that was worth mentioning. Those were the key ticket ones in terms of land use compatibility. So transport and movement. Both the city and the panel agreed on most points. We may have departed somewhat on a few. It's worth acknowledging that the Commission have said in their report that they noted their lack of expertise in this area. And I think it's just worth noting that they've just completed an assessment based on what they believe from all the information that has been gathered. So where we agreed on, we agreed that the movement network in its totality is incredibly fragile, and that the key corridors are expected to reach capacity by 2030. So the modelling is showing those sensitivities and the complexities of trying to get people to and from the stadium. The post-event pedestrian movement. So when we've got people moving en masse, this is what had the panel the most concerned, aside from evacuation, which we sort of worked through, and the proponent provided a lot of additional plans showing how people could be evacuated quickly. But back to the core issue is around the main pedestrian routes. The panel noted in their report that the DSG had said that the full or partial closure of traffic lanes is not supported. But they also said that the pedestrian bridge to Collins Street, whilst considered beneficial, is not essential. So what this means is that they're expecting that the people that will be visiting the stadium will most likely go over the Bridge of Remembrance or down down through into Salamanca and disperse. So this is a contention for us as a city, because we know that people will want to get to the car parks, particularly because we know we won't have a bus rapid transit network by this point, and that the car parks will be highly used. And so we would like to get people into the city as quickly as possible. All of this can be overcome, and the panel did talk to that point. You can put fencing, you can put barricades, you can direct people how and which way you wish, but it's where we need to be is what do we ultimately want to advocate for? Do we need the pedestrian bridge? What's the potential heritage impacts of the bridge? What's the cost impacts? It will ultimately fall to us at this point in time to be the advocator for that. So I think that will be a decision that we'll have to bring back and have a bigger discussion around, if the stadium is to proceed, what to do around this accessibility issue to the CBD. It's all good and well to have people going down through into Salamanca for a beer, but the vast majority of people will want to head back to their cars and get home if they've got kids, etc. So something just to put a pin in for now. There was also just a clarification on numbers. So the planning application, the planning report was done around that events must not exceed 24,500 patrons except for concert mode, which may accommodate up to 31,500 patrons. So 31,500. And we as the city host big events for up to 30,000 people, but the panel's concern was that you'd have a lot of people moving en masse. So in terms of the working group and getting things established and in place around event mode and how the city will manage its position, that's something that if the stadium is greenlit, that we need to get going on as soon as possible. So that Dan, who couldn't be here today, re-emphasised that to me. They also, it's probably just worth mentioning that the panel did agree that most people in the first instance are going to drive. It's the sheer reality. We don't have enough buses. We don't have a sophisticated enough network, and that it is achievable. We know what we do. We've got our Christmas pageant coming up. You know, we make all sorts of changes to how parking works through the city to allow people to come in, especially on a weekend. It'll come down to those Friday night, Wednesday night games, those sorts of things where things will be really complicated for the city. But there's time to work out how we approach that. Talked about parking. Okay.
Sorry, can we just look at the parking slide again?
Yep.
So they're expecting our car parks to be open for a comment, did they look at, sorry, I've interrupted. I'll ask later.
No, the expectation in all the transport reports talks to the publicly accessible car parks, how they would function. We would have to put some protections in place for Argyle Street, but there's certainly ways that we can approach this and how we particularly manage our on-street parking. That's something that we usually have quite, we have free parking basically when there's certain events on and things like that. So there's also that management of taxi and ride share with geo-blocking and things like that, and traffic light sequencing. All the tools would have to be used basically to work out the best way to get people to and from the stadium. Just on environmental effects, the shallow groundwater has obviously had people concerned for some time. Therefore, the car park, the underground car park, has been modified to a 2-level car park instead of 3, which will reduce the risk significantly in terms of the need to dig. Where they're at with remediation, so they've been remediating the site for a long time now. However, it's not finished, I think it's worth mentioning, and the audit has not yet been completed on that. Site suitability statements need to be done. There's a lot of work that basically needs to be done. But it's important to note that the EPA and the auditor believe that the contamination can be managed, but all of these reports need to be updated. Further assessments need to be complete to understand the suitability for the stadium development in terms of drilling down for all its piers. And the on-site remediation is considered feasible, but there was no further details provided. But yeah, a lot more reports are needed. But there was nothing that was raised at the hearings or through submissions that raised the concerns to an extent where it was a showstopper. The panel didn't really go into the weeds too much around excavated material management. I think they saw that as an issue for the project, and note around costs, as I think I've covered off, as we covered off in our submission, that if they do have to send significant landfill to Copping, it will come at a huge cost. So all of these things are still unknown. So they were pretty light in terms of their assessment because there was just too many unknowns for them to even comment on. Stormwater, we differed from the panel's comments here to some extent. The site itself is at the end of our stormwater network. In terms of its impacts to the networks, it's fairly minimal. It's proposed that the site will drain directly to the Rivulet, Victoria Dock and Tas Ports lands. There's existing pipes, plus a massive one near the Rivulet that would be pumping out of the site. In terms of the roof runoff, they haven't yet come up with a system to treat that water. However, the understanding in our stormwater engineering team is that that water wouldn't need to be treated wouldn't need too much treatment. We are fairly comfortable at an officer level of where they're sitting in terms of the stormwater design. So the panels, they were a little bit more concerned than we are. So. Lighting, I think this will come down very much to the roof treatment, and so our concerns were mirrored in the panel's report here as well. That depending on how translucent, depending on how much light will be bouncing back up through that roof is anyone's guess. The lighting will be very highly targeted. There's a lot less light spill than we used to have, but it's just that how those pillars will, how the light will work there. We haven't yet been convinced, but you can see there is curfews proposed for lighting. Noise. So I think we're going to touch on conditions in a second, but the updated noise assessments that were completed showed less impacts, basically, than what was first imagined. And vibration risks, particularly around near the museums, they were considered to be low. This was under a peer review assessment done on the noise and vibration. So none of these, the presentation that we were taken through by the proponents, consultant that was engaged to do a peer review, sort of put to rest some of those concerns that we originally had. The construction programming and sequencing section of the report is the smallest, and that's because they just didn't feel they had enough information to really comment too much further than this. We've got a lot of projects that have to happen in and around the stadium, from the bus plaza to the Northern Road to the Tas Ports wharf upgrades, whilst the stadium will be built. So the state is aware of this, and how will all these projects be delivered concurrently is is just raised for flagging basically in the report, but not really commented on. All right, so next steps. So this is the report. Their final recommendation was for the project to not proceed. However, the minister has at his or her discretion to proceed on a few different avenues, as you can see here. If it was that the minister recommended an order determining the project in accordance with the Commission's report, if that first option was taken on the left, then the project would simply be approved or not approved. But that's not where we're sitting. What's more likely to occur is that the minister will recommend the order for the project to proceed, but not in accordance with the Commission's report. Therefore, the order determining the project will be resolved by both Houses of Parliament, and then the project would either be approved or not approved. And then that decision, once that's triggered, then the additional conditions processes would then start. So we believe that the order is to be brought to Parliament later in the year. I think that's where it's sitting at the moment. The permit conditions, just to touch on this, during the hearings themselves, the panel made it clear to us, the EPA, Taswater, the proponent, that they wanted all of us to agree on permit conditions if they were to attach them, if they were to recommend the project. That's what they said. So there was meetings held, and the conditions that are attached in the recommendation report were conditions that were drafted under consultation with officers here. The panel's view, though, they've attached them as an appendix to the report, but they don't believe that the project can be built, so therefore they did not put any further conditions. They didn't say you may be in a mind to approve the project, so here are the conditions. They've simply said these are the conditions that were agreed to. And they made no further comment on the conditions as drafted in that appendix. Okay, all right, that was the report. Yeah.
Well done. Thank you. Okay, so I'm sure there's quite a bit of questions and discussion to occur. So look, we'll get started, and I'll move us around as quick as we can. So do try to focus, if you've got a question, try to focus on the question, please. Okay, Councillor Dr. Sherlock, you're up first.
Thank you. I just had one question regarding the car park. So it's gone down to 2 levels underground, and it used to be 3.
Yep.
So how many parking spaces were there, and how many are there now as a result of the change?
They've made some design changes.
Yeah.
So from memory, they're still at about 300 car spaces. There was only a loss of a few car spaces because I actually sat and recounted them myself, but they've rejigged the car park design to keep the requirement of 300 car spaces.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. We have Alderman Zuko.
I just got one question, is when it goes to the Parliament, lower house, upper house, and if it's approved by the upper house, what say has the Hobart City Council got into it? Nothing? Thank you.
Thank
Only
you.
to the extent that we are nominated as the regulator for conditions in the permit, so we would become a regulator for some of those conditions. We are in discussions with the state about authorising officers of the state to take on some of that responsibility, but we have...
My question was, sorry to interrupt, but my question was, do we have any say in its approval?
No.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? We'll go for Alderman Bloomfield.
That was a brilliant report, thank you. Made so many questions clear for me, which is brilliant. I'm just curious regarding, with the way you just said that you've got control over those conditions, if they fail to meet our conditions, does that stop it or change it at all? They would just override us?
No. So, I mean, it becomes a looper permit. So it comes a permit in the same way that it would have been issued by the council. So the conditions are enforceable under the provisions of LUPA.
Right.
So our powers would be limited to issuing a notice to require them to comply or prosecution.
Okay, so the other thing would be, given the information regarding the cenotaph, that's something that's always been kind of worrying for me. That really categorically said it's not fit to work next to the cenotaph. Are there any of the planning conditions going to be floating around that, or is that something that's just, they've already walked on by that one?
No, that's correct. So the panel said, I'm sorry, I'm speaking for you, but the panel said it's inconsistent with the heritage values of the cenotaph. The minister, if they recommend an order to the government that it proceed, take a different view to what the panel adopted, and there'd be no conditions with respect to how it interacts with the cenotaph.
Are you talking about if there's any changes to the form or height, or so during the design? You're not talking about any design changes, further design changes or anything?
Well, it was just the way you highlighted that there were 4 different bodies that had the rights associated with conditions, and heritage should obviously be a standard condition, but I suspect it's not a legal planning condition, is it? It's more of a social one. And I don't think any of those 4 bodies actually had the right to put a condition to say you've got to respect that. I just think that there's a great big blank slate there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's the State and Projects Act that this planning assessment is done by, unfortunately, overrides everything. It sort of put it all to the side.
Yeah.
And that put everyone in a painful position, and that's why they had to assess it against the guidelines. So those draft guidelines that we put together, that we didn't put together, the state put together, that we put a submission in, we did call for that, the concerns of heritage and all of these things to be considered. And that's why the panel assessed it against, but assessed it considering all of these factors. And that's why they've said they don't believe it should proceed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's fine. It just looked like that was the blank spot that they were going to write over us. The other thing was too, it's interesting to note that the underground car park was only ever going to be 300 anyway, which wasn't really sufficient if you were trying to, 30,000 people. That's just tokenistic, isn't it? Do we have any ability to push perhaps and say, well, look, we need a little bit more than this, and say if we were able to ask for support to get like a multi-storey car park maybe on the Queen's Domain on the other side, so they can kind of like park up behind, say, the pool, and then walk down across the bridge, and that would ameliorate a lot of stuff. Do we have any rights to say, well, bargaining or anything like that we could do?
I'm going to put my Dan Vidal hat on. We probably don't want people to come and park all in the one car park, because when everyone's leaving, that will also destroy the network. We kind of want people to walk and spread out and slowly get to their cars and go off as they need to, like this, in a radial fashion. But I appreciate that a lot of stadiums, inner city ones, some of them do have car parks, but most of them don't, for that reason of trying to en masse exits of those car parks are really hard to manage.
I just thought it'd be like one off, because this Argyle's would be the same distance, and it'd just take the pressure off. That'd be as well as kind of like pointing out. But anyway, it's okay.
The city has the ability to advocate, as we will have to for the Collins Street Bridge, but that was something we'd want to make sure that we had the transport evidence to suggest that that's required. And I'm not sure Dan would necessarily support that, but yeah, that's something that could be done if the council wished it, to check whether or not the validity of needing another car park.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Alderman Bloomfield. We have Councillor Dutta next.
Thank you, Chair. I want to make a few observations. Firstly, I think from the very beginning, you have always presented so well, and I must congratulate you and your team. You had a very good grasp and clear understanding that made it easier for me to understand all the facets. And I think you must be commended for that. The one question that I have is, now given the scenario that if only one member of the Legico shifts, it's going to go through. Now, in that situation, what can we do? You know, how can we proactively now start moving towards, if it happens, what is the best way we as a city can hopefully make it better so that it's not impacting on us too much? Can we have a memorandum of understanding? Can we discuss with the government? Well, what are, you know, the ways we can deal with it?
Michael, did you want to comment
CEO?
on that?
Well, in respect of the conditions, which is one of the areas that we're looking at the moment, certainly an MOU should be negotiated that recognises the resource capabilities of the council versus other entities. In terms of the broader, I mean, I guess that's a matter for the council to consider. I mean, the point made by Alderman Bloomfield earlier in respect of additional parking, I mean, there is demand and there is a demonstrated need, and the transport strategy does talk about, you know, multi-storey parking being provided on the peripheries of the city. So whether the council wishes to try and negotiate outcomes, I don't know. That's a matter for the council to consider. But I think for us, it's around initially would be certainly setting out the conditions from an operational point of view. I guess council really needs to consider the broader issues.
So just to follow up, so will that be, for example, negotiating the financial impact that's going to be on the city, so that there is a contribution from the state?
I'm not sure the financial impacts you're talking about.
So say, for example, if there's going to be more car parking to be done, and if there's going to be control that is going to be impacting on us, or if there's going to be some other ways that we are financially impacted.
Yeah, look, again, we'd need to consider that. I'm not close enough to it to be able to comment on that.
Yeah, I think it is a big issue in terms of the impacts. I'm just going to go to the map again. Sorry, just bear with me as the slides flick. So, particularly around Franklin Wharf and Sullivan's Cove, there is many comments by the panel in here that street upgrades, signage, footpaths, road, the Davey Street road changes, it's a state road, but they are recommending a whole plethora of a footpath and streetscape upgrades to accompany the project. That will become a push-pull, I believe, with the state, with us, particularly around, there's the nice to have, then there's what can be done sequentially over time. So around Salamanca, we've been doing all of the footpath upgrades and refinements and removing the curbs and gutters, but all of that takes time and takes a lot of investment, and it will really come down to us, I think, advocating with the state around that. But you can see in this map here the sort of the stretch of impact just in the immediate vicinity.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I picked up, but I wasn't, doing these slides to work with.
I know, it's a lot to get through.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly come November 4th or whenever towards the end of the year that we have more clarity, things like this will become more pertinent for us to discuss, I think.
Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Next up is Councillor Posselt.
Thanks, Chair. Jen, at the very end of your presentation, you said that they fundamentally didn't think that the project could be built. I just want to clarify.
It could physically be built.
Yeah. Oh, just when you were talking about conditions, you just had...
I'll explain what I meant a bit more.
I just want to clarify that.
Sometimes with a project, you can put conditions on a project to say, look, if you do this or you do X, Y, Z, this will get over the line. Some design modifications, minor tweaks here and there, change this materiality. They fundamentally believe that you couldn't condition it to a point that they see it as a feasible project in terms of its planning feasibility from a planning perspective, not its buildability, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for clarifying. I guess one other question, then I'll get on to transport stuff. Do we know what rates, do we have any idea what rates we get out of this?
we've done some calculations, and it would be significant in the first year, but that is still yet to be determined. But there would be significant rates, and then it's a matter for the council to decide if the increase in rates is pulled separately out. This is how Lara explained it anyway. The rates are then separated out and could be put into money for the rest of the precinct upgrades that we'll probably no doubt have to invest in, or it goes to rates relief for the rest of the municipality.
And those rates, through your chair, do it like you said, significant. Do you know if that, are we talking like $500,000, $5 million? Do you have a ballpark idea?
It was significant.
We can take that on notice. We will have provided that, so we can take that on notice and provide that again.
I think to not be so flippant, I think we need to just check the revised costings and come back to you. Yeah. So we were just doing back of the envelope ones initially.
Yeah. It'd be helpful, I think, for us to understand what it means from an ongoing income.
Yeah,
basis.
I had hoped that we could probably have Lara explain it. Because it's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah, totally. Also, slightly not your wheelhouse. These are my final couple of questions, Chair. When you mentioned that the city stadiums you're aware of, they have kind of radial disbursement of crowds en masse. Is this project and site fundamentally problematic because you can't get radial dispersion, partly because of the water, but partly because there's nothing to the north, so everything has to be sort of, maybe 90-degree dispersion?
Well, I'll take back that statement, because most of the bigger stadiums around the world actually funnel people to a major transport destination, like a train station.
Yeah.
And most people are used to, and they talked a lot about this at the hearings, that a part of the excitement and adrenaline and joy of visiting and going to a stadium is the fact that you are funneled with the rest of the crowds through wherever, streets and whatever. So, most major stadiums have people either decanting to a major bus plaza or a major train station. And so the panel was satisfied that the people can be dispersed down through Franklin Wharf or up to the bus plaza and across the Bridge of Remembrance. In their minds, they were satisfied that through crowd control measures you could get the people that way and that way. And we're not talking 100,000 people. We're the biggest stage, we're talking 23, maybe 30,000.
But they're talking about people getting back into the city over the Rose Garden Bridge then.
Yes.
So they're going three sides of the square rather than one.
Yeah. So that this is a point where we've known from events through Dark Mofo and the Regatta and New Year's Eve that people want to get across Brooker.
Yeah.
And where we haven't provided that option, they try and cross it anyway, and the police have stepped in. And this has happened on multiple occasions for us managing events. So that's where the rub is at the moment.
Yeah.
And Tas Police and the city generally work quite good in this respect, but DSG, their first position is always we've got to keep Davey Street open, but they usually they'll have to the event management plan will be very clear on how to get people to and from the stadium.
I guess though, in the absence of actual fencing to physically prevent people, so you're still going to have to put up cyclone fencing the whole way along the footpath.
Well, maybe not cyclone, but
some sort of formal barrier.
The barriers.
We did have that fatality this year outside the Grand Chancellor, people crossing that, and I just can see that happen. But it sounds like there actually is quite a lot more work to do.
Yes.
In that transport space and safety space of patronage.
And Tas Police, based on previous events, and this is having had many conversations with Dan about it, if they don't feel like people are dispersing safely, they just close the road.
Yeah.
And they've done that on Davey Street many times before. And we were talking with what happens across in Clarence at that stadium, and Tas Police have become more engaged with crowd management over the years because of these issues. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Councillor Harvey.
It's been covered. My interest was in the ongoing costs of infrastructure, our role in managing games, managing traffic, managing pedestrian, and what it's going to cost us over time and how we will get reimbursed or recompensed, but I assume the EEO type approach would sort all that stuff out. So you've covered it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Harvey. The Lord Mayor.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Did the panel touch at all on Council's economic development reports?
No, that was something we noticed. They've relied mostly on their own assessments and a few other assessments as well. I think the fact that one of the panel was an economist, but we couldn't see reference to our reports. Yeah.
So maybe they sort of discounted them a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, they did their own analysis.
Which conditions do you think they're going to find most difficult to meet? And is there a pathway that you would envisage where council might have to take action legally? Like, because the community will say, you're responsible, they've broken this, and what's that pathway? Because
Look, it's obviously difficult to tell because compliance is usually a very development specific. You can't really anticipate it. They're fairly standard conditions, notwithstanding the size of the project. The conditions are fairly standard type conditions. There's a lot of work that needs to go into design plans. There's a lot of work that needs to go into certifications. So they are fairly onerous conditions before they can even start construction that is trying to safeguard any compliance issues down the track.
I guess I'm thinking more about our role as the community. Arguably there's a significant percentage of this municipality that aren't fans of the project and will be looking at council in our compliance role and sort of calling up and picking up on this, that and the other. I mean, how much?
Look, it's difficult to tell. We often find that some of the bigger projects have the least complaints once they start construction, especially ones with conditions like this that are very tight, especially around construction management and traffic during construction and noise during construction, which will all be regulated by the EPA, not council. Our role really becomes important once construction has been completed and the use commences, where we are really involved. We also have some requirements to confirm certain elements are constructed in accordance with the plan in the same way that we do in a normal loop of permit. So the wayfinding signage, for example, if that remains with us, we would have to, if we received a complaint it's not in compliance with the plan, we would need to check whether or not it was. But they're fairly standard type compliance requirements that we have on a council permit, so not really concerning. The biggest ones that would cause the most work would be, it's not, somebody just ringing up with a very generalised, it's too high. But our suggestion to the state is that you build in compliance checks as you construct in it. You're going to be required to have a surveyor on site setting it out when you construct it, have them confirming your levels as the construction is going on. Don't wait for the complaint near the end of construction to confirm whether or not it is or not. So there's safeguards that can be put in place. As I said, the conditions are fairly comprehensive and require a lot of work to be done.
So for example, if there's a problem happening down underneath, to what extent will there need to be staff sort of on duty on this project, or separate additional staff? Like they're building the car park and someone sort of says there's a problem with it. Do you have to be sort of going down and how much will there need to be checking? And
well, that really depends on the terms of the MOU with the state as to which conditions we give them powers to regulate as authorised officers and which ones we keep for ourselves, so to speak. I'm really not expecting there to be much additional work out of this compared to what we currently have, given the safeguards that are built into the conditions, given the MOU with the state.
But
Yeah.
trusting the proponent to...
Well, we always do with every development, even
We
ones that
don't
we
trust the
don't
proponent because the state growth have a role of regulator as well. I know something that's a bit tough, but they do in the sense, so it wouldn't be quite trusting the proponent.
So yeah, I mean, I guess one thing just as a comment, and then another question. I mean, I think it's worth making the comment that everything that the council elected member group and the officers raised as concerns have been endorsed by a highly professional panel, and I think we should, I guess, congratulate, for want of a better word, congratulate ourselves on identifying some very significant problems with this project, and I think we should feel actually empowered to speak, even continue to speak about our concerns with the project. So I'm a little, I don't want us to sort of just be like, well, it's been found to be an absolute dog, but it's going to be built. Like, I'm sorry, that's, our concerns have been endorsed by people that are really well qualified in this space. So I think we should be doing what we were doing in the lead up to this planning report coming out, which is undertaking the briefings of the elected members. You and Neil did I was sat in on some of those briefings. They were really professional, and I know a lot of elected members, they have one staff member, even though this report is here, the Tasmanian Planning Commission is not going to do any verbal briefings that I'm aware of. And I would like to see that we do use the time between now and November to again just provide an offer that, look, these are the things we've picked up, these are the things you may want to raise in your speeches or not raise, but again, just that very dispassionate providing the information that we've done, because I know they were very much appreciated by elected members, members of Parliament who really felt quite overwhelmed with the amount of material, and that will be the same situation. So I'd really like to see us do more briefings before 4th of November. I'm not sure what else the triggers are, like whether there'll be a council decision that we need to formally consider the report, or what else might be our role in terms of communicating anything else about. I'm still a little bit nervous about this issue of the landfill. I know that's something that's still to be determined, but and also the rates. I find it's more of a question and a little bit of a concern. Is there a legal basis on which the state government could apply for a rates exemption? Is a question, and this is probably a question to take on notice. Are there other stadiums that have sought, that basically don't pay rates or pay discounted rates? And can we, not immediately, but can we look into that? Just, it's a worst case scenario, but it's better to be sort of forewarned.
We'll take that one on notice, as you suspect. In terms of the decisions at this point, I would think the council will need to consider the MOU. That won't be an officer decision, that'll be a council decision in terms of that, so that would come back, I think, but I don't know that there would be much else in terms of the process, so no, that's our role in it.
So if the council as an elected group wanted to formally say something about this, it would have to maybe be through a motion or something in October, like before the November decision? Or?
Yeah, well, there's nothing, there's no process that warrants a council submission or a response. So yeah, it would need to be through some sort of a motion, I think.
All right, well, just moving along. Next we have Councillor Kelly, and you're next.
Thank you, Chair. So, just a couple of questions. I'm starting to get a bit confused with where we sit with this. As elected member, I mean, I've got my views I've got mixed views. I'm probably like a lot of these upper house politicians who are stating at the moment, we've got to have a think about it and get more information. I guess I'm a bit that way myself. But then I'm putting my hat on as a councillor, and so we've seen this evolve over the last few years, and we've watched all the different iterations and all that, and we've talked about it a lot, and we've met the government, and we've done all these submissions and all that. And I'm just thinking, I put myself into a scenario like in a planning scheme where I've got a house next to me being built, and if I don't like that house, what levers do I have to pull? And, you know, there's an appeal process if I'm a neighbour and if. And I'm just worrying that we're straying from what our remit is moving forward and what levers we can pull, because if the answer is we've got no levers to pull, I'm really questioning our place under the sun with the whole thing, you know. And as was said earlier, by Kirsten, I can't remember that, you know, a big part of our situation now is post-construction. And I would be concerned if we're taking our eye off the ball, excuse the pun, and not really super focusing on what time bomb or what bad things we're going to inherit here. And how many, sorry, just a couple of questions if I may, how many submissions or representations or the like have we put to the state government so far?
On this process?
Well, on the whole stadium.
Yeah, I'd have to take that question on notice because there's been quite a few because of the precinct plan. There was the draft precinct plan, there was the draft guidelines, there was the enabling legislation, there was the draft report. So I'd have to double check.
That's the answer, Jen, thanks. But so the point is, it's been a considerable amount. So what feedback have we had from them once we presented those and bundled them up and given? Have they given really good feedback and consultation with and having meetings with you guys on that?
Yeah, I would say hand on heart through the process from start to finish. The submissions that we have done have been considered. Everything from that draft precinct plan. So one of the big issues that we raised around the adequacy of the site size, and we've talked about the arbitrary boundary with Tasports. There has been some acknowledgement of that and some discussion and movement of the boundary. That's one thing. That was one thing I've noticed, a change in the dialogue around that. The draft guidelines themselves, they took on a lot of our feedback in the preparation of the guidelines for the assessment. And particularly our submissions have been reflected in this report. There's lots of quotes from our report. I can see my writing repeated through this. So certainly the Commission has been quite respectful to the city's role and the submissions. As far as the proponents gone, I think there has been a lot of frustration by a lot of agencies around the delivery of the wider precinct.
Okay, yeah, no, that's good. I was just a bit fearful that there'd been very little feedback. It's good to hear that your
if I can add to that
recognised.
too, with respect
Sure.
to the permit conditions, they have taken on board the comments that we made. So the starting point for the permit conditions was the enabling legislation and the permit conditions attached to that. We made submissions with respect to that draft permit, and all those comments have been taken on board and incorporated into the conditions attached to the integrated assessment report. But for the heritage comments that we made, because where we were in conflict with Tasmanian Heritage Council being the responsible body for enforcement of those conditions, they preferred their position rather than ours.
Right. And could you just remind me what the heritage overview was with it in a brief statement?
Look, it was minor concerns about operational issues.
Right, okay.
And definitions, but they were not concerns shared by the Tasmanian Heritage Council.
So did the TPC report give any positive aspects of it? The stadium?
Yeah, I mean...
Some big glowing paragraphs and meaty pages of, this is going to be great.
Nothing to that effect, because I think that the justification of their position was the body of the report, really. That being said, transport, they think a lot of those issues can be overcome.
But I mean more in a positive, you know, this is like, remember that AEC report we had done?
Yeah.
Which was pretty damn glowing, wasn't it?
For the city, because we're sort of that we gain more than we lose in that respect.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've seen from other cities that if you have a full game day event on, it's great for a city in that respect at a very layman's level sort of understanding. But the fact that it's a state project and it costs the state, which was an issue that they argued about during the hearings about the state financial impacts. They outweigh those local benefits, and that's probably what they kept saying. Yes, you get all these economic benefits, but the cost to the state. That's how they reach their position on balance.
Yeah, and that's where I'm getting back to my state of confusion. I mean, you know, we've got our Hobart Council hat on here, have we not? Looking at the benefits to the Hobart LGA, or are we looking at for the greater benefit of Tasmania?
That's for the council to
Exactly, the report considered it to the benefit of Tasmania.
Right. But no, what about us, though? So philosophically, should we be thinking with our council?
This is, Councillor Kelly, I think this is an issue for us to determine ourselves as councillors rather than asking the staff for advice on this particular issue. Or, I mean, potentially you could ask the CEO. We could ask the CEO, but I suspect his answer may be the same as my advice.
Well, just for you, CEO, mate.
Yeah, well, it is a bit difficult. Yeah, we are being drawn into the politics of it in terms of trying to answer that question, as you'd understand.
Yeah, anyway, I'm still confused on that. Yeah,
we've tried to present a balanced, we've tried to uncover every stone on the project, if that helps with your question, to see what the economic benefits were locally and putting them in the context of the state local benefits. And we've tried to have an active role around how the stadium will function in the city to the best of our abilities.
Yeah. All right, and finally, congratulations on the hard work you've done. I know it's consumed a lot of staff with it, and as it should. It's our responsibility to do that. I would caution moving forward that if we're not even going to have any say now from beyond this point, we're not even going to be recognised, our focus should be on that post-delivery or post-construction, if that's going to happen at all.
And the wider precinct, so there is 10,000 square metres of buildings, and there's the affordable residential component, and there's the Aboriginal culturally sensitive zone. There's all of that still to work through, and so our role there in terms of advocation and holding them to account and all of these things, I think, will continue.
Yeah, because and the final thing I will say, sorry, I am confused as to which hat I should be having on here, because if you look at the whole state vote, for instance, you know, there's always statistics saying 60% of the people who voted for Liberal or Labor voted that way, so there's support for it. So there's different ways we can be looking at through this. So thanks for your report.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Next we have Alderman Zuko.
So another question, if I may ask. Are we at question time at the moment, or are we discussing the matter?
Oh, it's question and feedback. I think that's what I said when we started.
Well, I must have misinterpreted what you said, Chair.
Now, do we have any other comments from anybody? In that case, I might make some myself. I just had a question regarding the crowd increase to 38,000 that the Premier announced the other day. I think they've announced maybe in the last few days that they'll now be able to get 38,000 into
38,000, did it?
Yeah. I was just wondering how the concert mode of 31.5 thousand is going to fit, how they're going to fit 38,000 when their concert mode was a lot lower.
The transport planning was done up to 40,000 in terms of the modelling. Yep. So there was some buffer put into that transport planning. This particular assessment was done up to that number, and they were quite at pains to talk about that at the hearings.
There was some discussion at the hearing about accommodating more patrons by removing seats in concert mode and the like, but they accepted a permit condition limiting it at the hearings to 31,500 was appropriate, and that any increase above that would require further approval processes.
That's great. Thank you for that.
At least that's what occurred during the hearing.
Yeah, okay. Yes, because it does seem to have come after the hearings, which is a bit confusing. I guess I had a couple of comments to make. I'm pretty worried about the amount of fill that might go to Macrobies. Pretty against us having to accept any of that, really. And the big worry for me is the cost of compliance activities that might be sort of duck-shoved onto the council. I do have a lot of concerns about those, and I can hear already from the answers given that that's been raised. So I'd just like to add my voice to that. My last sort of question was just about the buses. They allocated sort of $49 million for the buses in the budget. I mean, do you guys have any idea what that's going to pay for? Is that just for the bus, the hard, the bus turning circle sort of side of things, rather than any actual buses, do you think?
I'd have to take that on notice because I haven't had a chance to look at those figures. Certainly the cost of the Northern Road and the bus plaza had some very rough figures applied to it. But given that the bus plaza itself will be relocated and become a part of that Northern Road, all of those costs and figures has not been done, basically. Okay. So, but there's in terms of purchasing new buses, that's a whole other thing. So I'm not quite sure if it's new buses or for the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's great. If you could find anything out, that'd be fantastic. But I understand it's a bit opaque at the moment. Look, that's it for my questions and comments. Does anybody else have anything further to say? Councillor Dutta.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I still, am of the view that we, as elected members, are representing our municipality. And I think we really need to take a position. I think the fact that, has already been mentioned, even before the report came, the report of our staff and our position on it has been vindicated. And therefore, I think we need to, for me, that is, I am here because of the ratepayers of Hobart. That, for me, is the essence of the whole thing. And if I can't represent them and voice their opinion, then I'm not fulfilling my role. Because of the number of them under the Act, if they come to me, then I will bring a motion that I would want to, represent them. And I think that's my position, regardless of the fact, if it goes ahead or not. But I think I will take that stand. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you for the comment, Councillor Dutta. Councillor Posselt,
thank you.
Nice and quick.
Yes, just let the room know that Labor announced 40 minutes ago that they'll be supporting this stadium. They will support this stadium.
Yeah. So while we're in discussion, they made their decision.
They tend to do that, actually. That happened last time with the election.
All right. Well, look, I think that brings us to an end of that item. It's been a good discussion, and thank you so much to the staff. That was very comprehensive. Thank you. I'll just give us all a little chance to take a breath.
That's not the plan. Yeah.
All right. So look, just moving on to 6.4 tonight, the second last item for workshopping, which is the Hobart Design Guidelines. It's an engagement report and final document. So if we could just have the program leader for urban design and the manager for place design, sport and rec to come up to the table and speak to the item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Philip Holidays an apology as he's unwell today.
Okay, so just wanted to introduce yourself and your colleague. That'd be great.
Yeah. So my name is Jaime Parsons and my colleague is Roy Liu, and I'm the program leader urban design, and my colleague is the urban design officer also in the team, and we're all part of the place design sport and recreation group.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for that.
Okay.
You guys have a presentation?
Yes. So, firstly, thank you very much for having us here, and we're delighted that after a long journey of developing together the first ever urban design guidelines in the state, that we're here to hopefully come to a conclusion that leads to a better design Hobart for all. a lot of the core of the guidelines comes from the work that was undertaken in 2017, 2018 for the community vision, and more concretely the design manifestation of how you can make for a vibrant central Hobart, but also that of the other neighbourhood plans that are currently taking place. For example, the approved North Hobart plan and others that will come. So as I was saying, it's been quite a long journey of about 2.5 years of non-continuous work. There was a very high level an initial stage in which we determined, together with actually also elected members, the principles framework that underpins the Hobart Design Guidelines, and that also went out for conversations with the design and development industry, and then a second phase in which that was populated with concrete design guidance in the form of these guidelines that fall under each one of the 7 principles. And now we're here as we'll be seeking formal adoption of the guidelines, hopefully at the 29th of September council meeting. So you're sick and tired probably of hearing this, but they really are the first ever urban design guidelines, complete urban design guidelines we've produced in the state. They're place inspired, and you can think of them as like a handbook to help guide development, both public and private, and they're made up of elements of best practice, but also those community aspirations, like we were talking about, the community vision and the many conversations that have taken place over the last 2 and a bit years. These are the 7 principles that you're probably now quite familiar with. They've just been ever so slightly tweaked in terms of their wording, but they remain very much the same as the last time we came and talked to the elected members. And we have country not simply as an interpretation of past and history, but also as a way of encapsulating the place of Hobart in a large landscape, in a very unique sort of setting, and our relationship with our ecosystems. The form of a compact and cohesive city which delivers on the state government's ambition for 70% also infill, and in the 30-year Greater Hobart Plan. Use that talks to, obviously, the need for housing located next to jobs and services, but also acknowledges our capital city role for workplaces, movement. So if we have a compact and cohesive city, what are the elements in particular of accessibility for an active and travel-friendly city that reinforce that? Amenity to make sure that those new working spaces, those new places where we live, have good light, can deliver sound attenuation if they're in the city, and can be comfortable. Then the idea of greening, which is probably the one that received the most conversations and discussions, and you'll see later the most support as well by the community, which is to bring nature to the city and also restore some of our natural environments when we're doing so. And then resilience, which talks about how the city responds, mitigates, adapts to climate change, but also our ongoing challenges and opportunities in terms of bushfire, etc., etc. The structure of the individual sort of sections, each one of these 7 sections under principles, is relatively simple. So the principle states the why of that future Hobart that we want, why it's important. Then you have a guidance item title, which is one of those guidelines. For example, 2.2 says build densely intelligently. Then you have a little bit of a short 1 or 2 paragraphs explaining what that is about. And then you have individual bullet points that they're sort of design strategies and suggestions. It's not meant to be exhaustive and cover everything, but they give a flavour of what can be done to make it a bit easier to use.
Just, sorry, Jaime, can
Yes.
I just interrupt? We're just a little bit short of time because we ran over in the last
Yes.
item a little bit. I just was really keen on the design guidelines and the talk about that and the
Yes.
guidelines themselves rather than what goes into them
Yes.
so much, if that's okay.
Yeah, so as in the engagement aspect of it, or
The
what
Engagement Act and the final draft, I guess, were the two
Yes.
key items.
So, this I will just briefly show.
Great.
So that's the extent. So the extent is the whole municipality. However, they're more useful in areas that are more compact and dense, because there is where design becomes more important, and the audience is very broad. Hence, the language also incorporates community-friendly language as well. Okay, this I'll just touch upon briefly. So they are to inform future strategies and policies like structure plans. They are to inform, some of our own projects in terms of public realm, etc. And most importantly, be fundamental in the pre-application process for development applications. And the Urban Design Advisory Panel is going to be super important in terms of that. So, in terms of the actual engagement of this stage 2, there was a lot of presentations and a lot of conversations with committees. So we went in total to 8. And then there was also meetings with, state government, the homes towers, etc., and also with some planners and people in the industry. There were opportunities for wider sort of community engagement as well at this informal pop-up at the Farmgate Market. And then there was the forums themselves, which were probably the key events, the star events. One of them was the second public forum we did, and which we invited everyone from the public. There's a YouTube recording. If anyone's ever has an hour or so to waste, you can just watch it away. And here it was really about having this conversation with anyone who turned up, and it was quite productive, and the panel was incredible. The Professional Industry Forum was deliberately targeted at and had the participation and representatives from the Australian Institute of Architects, the Australian Institute of Landscape Architects, the Planning Institute. There was also representatives from the University of Tasmania in terms of their Geography and Planning section, and also informal groups. And again, this led to a very good question and answer, and a very good conversation afterwards that also informed the guidelines. And then there was a number of city walks. We realised this format when we had participated at open house prior, that it seems to work quite well when you talk about wider sort of concepts, and these 3 city walks were well attended, and people that attended them provided great sort of feedback into the Hobart design guidelines themselves. So there was also an online aspect to this, the Your Say Hobart project page. It was active for about 6 weeks, and everything was there, for people to download, read, and also a brief explanation of what it all is about. The online survey, and then there was also a little bit of an activity for places that people like. In terms of the actual sort of visitation, was pretty good for these sort of broader type of projects, about 2,000. But the one I would like to emphasise was that in terms of the online survey, we got 197 responses, which is statistically significant. It was actually a very good response rate for these sort of documents. As I was sort of foreshadowing earlier, greening came top of the 7 principles in terms of strongest focus and strongest connection by the community, with movement and form sort of coming quite close. Then in terms of what people thought about the idea of a more compact city, overall there was a strong support for it, with 51% saying it's very important, and if you add the 30%, of important. You get over 2/3 supporting that. This goes higher when you talk obviously about housing and mixed-use development, unsurprisingly, and goes even higher when you talk about open spaces and having, buildings that places that benefit from good public open space. And then the final sort of question of the survey was really, to people after they've gone through the survey and read a couple of, key points to understand what they're about. They're asked if they support it, and 71% indicated they did support them, which is actually very high. And for detailed information about this, the attached community engagement report goes into a lot more of this. The other one that I want to highlight is we undertook this activity about what guidance within the draft Hobart Design Guidelines people thought was most useful or applicable to two different types of site. One, being the KMD, a larger sort of city block within the central Hobart plan, and then a much smaller infill block along Feltham Street, which is also part of the now approved North Hobart neighbourhood plan. What we got out of this is a clear understanding of what a very diverse group of people from the majority of the committees we attended, plus internal staff from about 10 different teams, is that build densely intelligently came top. Then we had mixed-use development as the second, with providing, public open space as the third. So all of these we have now highlighted in the draft checklist that will form part of how you apply, and use these to just make it easier and more transparent for designers, developers and ourselves to use. So the key aspects of that we heard were that the organisations were very supportive, including we got a letter of unanimous support from the Council of Hobart Community Associations. And the key themes were really quite specific and constructive guidance, which we incorporate into the version you have attached to the agenda and the prints that we have here. Then there was a strong desire by a few organisations to work more collaboratively, more closely with council, like for example, Homes Tasmania. And then, how these are going to be implemented was the main matter that came up. So in terms of improving the document, there's been added emphasis on the pre-application process. We've integrated the country principle more clearly with the other 7 principles and added a case study to make it more concrete. In this case, it is the Riwana garden in the Inveresk campus of UTAS. Then we've modified some of the individual guidelines, added a few, we added, for example, deep soil, improving explanatory diagrams. Some of the photos have been reviewed, and and overall just did what we could call a significant polish. There was enormous copy edit done to really streamline the text and improve its readability. And probably the one that's most apparent is that now we've got these illustrations, not only the cover, but also for each one of the principles. That was close. And these illustrations are quite deliberate, because they're one of the issues that we encountered, and that I have definitely encountered over the years, is when people take photos literally as that's what you're meant to do. No, look, they're just an idea and a concept, and the illustrations are broader. They're about Hobart, but they also allow people to be creative in their response, so anyone that comes and picks them up can then understand it at a deeper level. So to wrap everything up, really there's the idea is that the Hobart Design Guidelines help connect what you could call the innovation ceiling, so the things that we aspire to do, like what the C wants, that we see in the community vision, and then what we need to do, which is, you know, the necessary regulations and legislation of the compliance floor. It helps translate some of that in development application sort of sense, and in terms of the built form of the city. And hopefully over time as well, some of that, as it's well tested and well used, can then translate across into the planning scheme and other forms. There's a few ideas for how to implement this, but yeah, the checklist that I just mentioned, so there's a draft one that was shared as part of the community engagement, which we've refined. The Urban Design Advisory Panel will be fundamental in this. There's been a strong desire to have more public talks and events. Every time we hold the forums there's very strong feedback about you should do this more often. And then what I just mentioned, you know, in the future, once well tested and well understood, you know, some aspects of it might make it into the planning scheme. Then aspects of it that are not clear could be their own design manuals into the future, as has happened in places like New South Wales with a better place, you know, as they tested them, then other aspects of it will evolve. Case studies, you know, there's a few there, but those are always welcome. And then there's been conversations that predate me and will post-date me about celebrating good design. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jaime. Now, do we have any questions or comments from around the table about the design guidelines? Councillor Harvey first.
Yes, well designed.
Thank you.
Design guidelines. I think it's a really beautiful document. Normally I'm not impressed with a lot of documents because you can't read them, they're cluttered.
Yes.
And also because we get them as a photo rather than a document, but to hold that in my sweaty little palm is very nice. And I think that's a really great piece of work, great body of work, easily accessible. So well done, you guys.
Thank you very much.
So what's next with this? We done?
It will come to the council.
Still got to come to council? Yep, okay.
All right, thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Dr. Sherlock, did you want to speak next?
Okay.
No?
I just wanted to say, but
Bill said it.
Bill said it. Bill always takes my stuff.
Still your thunder.
Ditto.
Data over there, I steals my thunder as well.
All right, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to endorse the congratulations around the table. And I guess the main concern is the concern that you picked up in your consultations is around how do we make it happen?
Yes.
And how do we give it strength and status? I guess.
Yes.
I was just wondering about the idea of, rather than a focus on talks, which I know are sort of interesting, but I still feel they're a little bit too, and I know they broadly help education. I mean, I think talks are good if they're very targeted at the development community, maybe at builders, others. But I was just wondering about this idea of an awards program, because I feel like to get, you know, to have an annual program or maybe biannual where you can win the Hobart Design Award, or you could even win the Hobart Design Wooden Spoon for something that doesn't quite match up. That might be a bit controversial.
I would avoid that one personally, but yes.
But you know, for house and medium-sized building,
yes.
And like, I actually think that starts to change culture in a way that talks and things come and go. But awards, I think, are really a bit more meaningful. Like, how seriously are we considering that option, and how expensive is it to do awards? I know the architect institutes are very complicated, and they have to travel around the state, and there's cost of bomb. But how easy or hard do you think it would be to do that in Hobart? And is there an example of other cities that have used awards to really integrate good design into their culture?
Yes. So in terms of the complexity and scale, look, normally you would try to start at a quite small scale. you know. So normally you would start probably with few categories, maybe just 2 or 3, first of all. You would probably go for having it once biennially, so once every 2 years maybe, to make sure you have a good body, you know, of work, and that diminishes the cost very substantially. So, for example, at City of Launceston, there was the Heritage, Awards, and you know, one of the findings was that to get good entries, they needed to provide about a couple of years. There's been good case studies elsewhere where awards have been used very successfully. So the state of Victoria has the only type of comprehensive design awards in Australia, or also Brisbane City Council has had some forms of awards. So that they are used. In terms of how seriously they've been discussed, the reality is that the Australian Institute of Architects have mentioned this very informally as being, maybe this might be something good. So this would be something that potentially you partner, and you might try to partner with peer AIA, maybe ALA, and do it once every 2 years, and then you would share the load, and share the love as well. So it's seen as a collective, benefit for the industry as well. Yeah.
So just a little follow-up. So
Sure.
if we wanted to, lean into that idea, would that be something we need to move as an amendment?
Look, I think we could take it on notice and actually provide some advice back. I like the idea of engaging with peer and seeing a level of interest. So how about we do a little bit of due diligence and we can take that one on notice.
Excellent. All right. Back to Councillor Harvey and then Councillor Purcell.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I don't necessarily support a competition because it's the same people that will turn up to eat the sausage rolls as all the other competitions that we have. We all go to the same place, we all sit next to the same people we all know. But for me, if you want people to understand things, see things, do things, like I worked in experiential education as one of my, part-time career sort of things, and showing people stuff works far better than talking about stuff. And for me, if I run a, well, don't really run it, but I kind of, if you get in my car, you might end up on one of these tours, but it's a sustainability tour of Hobart. There's all these fantastic little bits of Hobart people don't hear about, don't know about. And generally the comments are, "You're awesome, Bill." Maybe. But you get to see things you don't see by going around.
Yeah.
Don't walk because it's too slow.
Yeah.
Drive. Don't worry about your petrol. Take people around to show them great examples.
Yes.
And you make a fun, interesting tour.
Yes.
And people go, "Oh, that was fantastic." Generally
Yes.
speaking, people like to be shown stuff, and give them the chance to talk about it, give them the chance to be inspired by things. And that's how I would operate if you want to get this out into the hands of hundreds of people, and people talking about what's good design, show them what good design is. Don't talk about it. Don't sit in a room. Go and do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is exactly, that photo, for example, is one of the city walks. And that's exactly the sort of reaction we got, from people, because they got to see and share what works, what was the intention of something that might not be obvious as well, and then it sort of provides for a better sort of positive language about change in the city, which is ultimately one of the fundamental aims of any such work.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. We've got one more from Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I tend to agree with Councillor Harvey. I think that there's already awards in place. But I am interested in how we can make using UDAP and using or adhering more to urban design guidelines more palatable and more attractive to developers and people doing building in our city. And I guess it would be very interesting to understand if there was potential financial incentives that we could give to people who have the ticket of approval from UDAP or who went through a pre-application phase. You go through a pre-application phase, you get 10% off. Everyone loves 10% off. Doesn't matter what you're buying. Doesn't matter if it's Bunnings or a building. So I would be interested to know how we can incentivise people to use these financially. And I think it's something that we should explore. Thanks. Good document.
Thank you very much. The way when that's been sort of implemented, the way it's been implemented is normally through a design excellence program, and you normally have a competition, a design competition, and or a panel that judges the quality of the design, and then you're eligible to some sort of more development or discount or whatever it may be. Yeah. So you would develop as a program.
You might get an extra floor. Who knows? Thank you.
Just also wanted to say thank you very much to everyone. So lots of people at council put in a lot of work. Obviously the team. Obviously, Roy, Megan, who was also at the beginning of the project, Megan Baines, who is no longer with the team, and obviously everyone around the table. So thank you very much.
Fabulous, thank you. So I think that brings us to the end of that item. Up to 6.5. There's one enclosed.
Oh, and one enclosed, yeah.
Alrighty, so the next item and the final sort of major item on the open is the transfer of ownership of the vessel Matilda. So if we just get the Manager of Open Space and the Director of Infrastructure and Assets, and the Manager of Legal and Corporate Governance.
Thank you, Chair. Now to something completely different.
Lead the discussion.
So this report's the product of an approach through the Australian Wooden Boat School at Franklin and conversations with the Tasmanian Maritime Museum. For those not familiar, Matilda is the vessel berthed on the barge next to the May Queen. The Constitution Dock Council has owned it for some time, as stepped out in the report. Where we've got to is there's a proposal driven by the Wooden Boat School and as a concept, I think it would be fair to say, supported by the Maritime Museum, to look at divesting ownership of the vessel and the pontoon to the Maritime Museum, but the transfer would occur to the Wooden Boat School along with an ex gratia payment of $25,000. The report speaks to why that's the number. With a view to conducting some restoration and stabilisation work on the vessel, which would remain on the pontoon at the end of the process and return to the Constitution Dock on public display. I think this is a fairly sensible proposal. I know Council's looked at Matilda in the past and we've struggled a little bit with what we're going to do in this space. So what I'm looking for tonight is sort of some commentary and feedback from the Council. Are we on the right track with where we're looking to go with this? If the answer is yes, I can keep progressing negotiations with the school and the museum to a more sort of operational level on how it would work. But if we are comfortable with it as a concept of disposing on these terms and the ex gratia payment alongside it, I'm happy to kind of keep proceeding with a view to bringing a report back to the Council.
All right, well, I'll open up debate. I might just flout convention and just start by saying I do support a continuation of this process. So thank you. Councillor Harvey, first up.
Yeah. I think when we're talking about this movable heritage stuff, I'm conscious that things can end up out of the state. So this is part of the heritage of Tasmania. And if this boat can be restored and if it can be put somewhere or used or whatever it is for forever, maintained well, and it stays in Tasmania. So I hate to think that, and because I don't think this will happen, that it drifts away. Sorry for the pun there, but it kind of changes a bit, and eventually someone buys it from somewhere else, And as long as this is kept in Tassie.
I know where you're going with this. Well,
we're going to segue into steamrollers. No, but okay.
So the vessel came to the council via deed, and there are conditions on the council in that deed around those very sort of things, and the nature of the organisation that can own it. So that is something that if council is warm to progressing this proposal, we can condition a deed of disposal to make sure that, I mean, the intention is that she comes back to the Condoc where she is now, but in a better state and under a different flag, so to speak. So we can pick up those concerns, councillor, and condition the disposal deed to cover that off to make sure she remains in Hobart or Tasmania, or that it goes to some other successor organisation of the Maritime Museum to ensure she stays in public hands.
Yeah, should they ever fold or something goes amiss there. Yeah, because there's been instances through you, Chair, where we've had bits of steamrollers and other equipment that were quite significant, like, you know, the only one of something. I'm sure Alderman Zuko will remember the...
You're thinking of the carousel?
No, the carousel was one, but remember though we had the debate around a couple of steamrollers that we had that were recovered from the parks in Hobart, and eventually they ended up, I think, moving out of the state because that was the best way to keep them preserved, I guess. You know, so I'm conscious of movable heritage of all sorts of things remaining in Tasmania as part of our collection of that style of heritage.
Do we have any other comments? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I'm familiar with the workings of the Maritime Museum, and I must say how good they are. A totally volunteer organisation apart from the manager there. And but perhaps what they bring to the table more is an incredible expertise with all things nautical. And they have their own boat down there. It's a sailing yacht, a very historic one. That's down in the wharf as well. And the hours they put in as volunteers and, you know, tweaking things and doing things is just phenomenal. And to be able to dovetail the Matilda in with that, and I mean, they're always doing little things. They go by, they tweak the rigging, they'll clean the leaves out of it, they'll check the pump, and all those sort of things. And that's absolute gold for us as a council. It supports the whole maritime thing, which is such a mega link to this city. You just got to look in that coat of arms over there, and top of the coat of arms is a boat. And I agree with Councillor Harvey on this movable heritage. We've seen it with the trams. We've spent $1 million on the trams, and they are just the most unbelievable, beautiful bit of gear out. And it reflects a time when we made things. Those trams were made just down the road here, and Tasmanian species of woods, from blackwood to Huron pine to oak, etc., and the working skill of them is phenomenal. So there seems to be a bit of a thing in some trends to ignore the moving history we've had in the past, but it's a very small price to pay this boat, and it has a deep route to Hobart. So I'd encourage a continued conversation with Maritime Museum, and hopefully something can be worked out. I will say though, they find it, whilst they've got a huge amount of people on their books there, it's dwindling, as with every other single volunteer organisation in Australia now. There's super big problems with apex clubs and all that. They're just closing down all over the state, or all over the country at least, indeed worldwide. So something we should be very aware of, and try and tap into this organisations such as this.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. We had the Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'm in principle very supportive. I was shocked to hear that we did. I mean, I found out a couple of years ago, but when I told the CEO that we owned a boat, he was shocked and I was shocked. But the only question I'd have is there $25,000 worth of work required to ship? And just in case we're asked about the due.
Well, look, I would say, as a recovering wooden boat owner, boat stands to bust out another 1,000. Yeah. So, yes, the number is not an arbitrary number. It's based on what we presently spend on insuring the vessel. Mm-hmm. There has been a historic allocation towards maintenance that's sort of been spent on an ad hoc basis. But look, so the number, there is a science behind the number to your question. And the thing is that when the boat school or the museum gets it back, there is an ongoing maintenance cost. So you need to give them a transition period to support the ownership. So I mean, they might, assuming we go down this path, they may want to spend half the money on improvements and stabilisation now and keep the rest for operating maintenance into the future, or they might want to spend all of it now and then worry about it later. So I need to do a little bit more work with them in that space, but I'm fairly comfortable with the science behind the 25,000.
Oh, I had an impression that it was a different organisation was getting the 25 grand.
So the boat, the money will go to the Maritime Museum on the
Okay.
present proposal, but the Wooden Boat School are the subject matter experts for anything more than sort of personal maintenance and work on these vessels. So that's why it's reflected in the report. So.
All right, thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Possell.
Thank you. Interesting to hear that you've gone from boats to cars, but we'll discuss that another time. I think this is insane, personally. Not the notion of moving it on, great, fantastic. But when I read this report today, my jaw hit the floor. I was like, I cannot believe that we own an 1800 boat that sits at the waterfront. How is this remotely related to core business of council? And I guess one of the concerns is, which I've learned from your opening tonight, Wes, is that this has been proactively brought to council by a third party rather than council identifying it as an asset that we shouldn't have. And I guess that brings me to the question, can we have an audit of unconventional assets so that the council is very clear as to what we own or don't own, which is not conventionally owned by councils?
To your question, and the CEO might have something to add, I don't think it's a truism to say that council wasn't looking at progressing this independently.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We had an unsolicited approach to the council at officer level that has kind of made the stars align. So it's not necessarily correct to say that we've just sat back and done that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make that inference.
The CEO might want to add something, but I take your point on unusual assets that we might have floating around the place.
Yeah, No, I think we do need to do some work on our inventory of assets that we do hold, because obviously we have quite a stock, and Jeff and I have inspected a few across the different storage areas that we have. What did you refer to them as?
Unconventional.
Unconventional.
Yeah,
I'm not sure exactly what that means, but nonetheless, an inventory, I think, is something that we really do need to put some time into.
And see, I'm probably referring to not just heritage items in this space, so it would be really interesting to understand, do we own any more boats? Trams, steamrollers, how much do they cost to store? How much is their insurance value? I was really surprised to learn that we're paying $16,000 a year to insure that boat. So do we have any cost for the steamroller and the trams? But also things like the kitchens that the Lord Mayor has been interested in. I think they'll all go into the unconventional asset category.
Well, I think they'll all go into an inventory, which I think that we do need to put some work into. So.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just add, sorry, the 16,000 was a typo. It's closer to $6,000 per annum.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was actually just about to intervene and say that, that the finances are slightly different to what's presented here, because the costs are actually significantly lower by about $10,000. Is there anyone else who wishes to provide feedback or ask questions around the table? No? Well, that brings us to an end of that item. Thank you so much for presenting. Now, questions without notice. It's the final portion of the open meeting. Do we have any questions without notice? Councillor Dutta.
Yeah, I have one question. It's been brought to my attention that the Diwali organisation haven't received any fund they applied, and I just wanted to know what's the rationale. What they've explained to me is that they were behind their putting in their application for the spend that they had, acquittal, for about 5 days or so. But I'm just wondering, because they have just won an award and they've been contributing quite significantly, and I'm just wondering, what's the rationale, so I can, speak to people who come to me about it.
Might just ask the CEO for some advice on that one.
I'll probably refer that to Ben, who I know has been dealing with it.
That festival's contacted us recently. I understand they've got an outstanding acquittal that needs to be closed out, so I'll refer with them where they're at with that. But they're open, they're willing to apply for the next round of grant, but open at the moment, so they can come to us. We have spoken to them recently about where they're at with their grant applications.
Fabulous. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Kelly.
We did pass, I'm not sure if we passed a motion or was agreed to that with building construction sites, and I may direct this through you, Chair, to Director of Planning. the hoardings that go around them and that, we'd have artworks and all that going on. I know that now, with two major construction sites, the KFC up in Harrington Street opposite St Mary's and the one down Sandy Bay Road opposite St David's Park, I've got the protective building fence there, yet I've only got the only signage on them is their logos of the construction company. Where do we stand now with that idea we had? It's been supportive for artworks to go on the hoarding.
Through you, Chair, we have a limited ability to require our artistic hoardings on private land. Where the hoardings are using our land, we have a much stronger ability to require that. We have offered for construction companies to adopt it anyway because they look pretty great and there's been varying levels of interest designs.
Yeah, because I think as we spoke about in the reports we had, it was such a brilliant way to project it, typically hiding these ugly sites and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's something we can get some real big goals on that and involve the arts. It's been talked to death before, so I don't know if we can revisit that or just if we're just going to let it slide away. I don't know.
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to reinstigate those discussions.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Lord Mayor.
Just to follow up to Councillor Kelly's question, is it possible to get recirculated a council decision from, I don't know, maybe 3 or 3.5 years ago about our hoarding standard? Because I thought we had made a decision through not planning but some other standard around what's acceptable in the city to have a higher standard of hoarding and not allow for see-through fences anymore.
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to refine and reseat that policy.
Sorry?
I'm happy to reseat that policy. My understanding is that the controls are very much private land or public land, which we don't have a mechanism. We can have a policy that we'd like people to do that, but if it's on their own land, it's my understanding that we don't have the regulatory power to require anything.
I guess just a follow-up question. So where the hoarding is actually a shared boundary with the public footpath, my understanding is every city in the country does have hoarding standards.
Through Chair, I'll have to take that on notice and dig out the cost.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Posselt.
Thank you. Very quickly, just in the context of Launceston Council being in the media for a trip off to their sister city this week, I was wondering if Council could be informed of the ongoing cost of maintaining our two sister city relationships and if those two sister city relationships can be formally reviewed.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you. Any further questions? All right. Well, that's it. I will close the meeting at 6:35.